Good evening to all. So, as the topic is very interesting, this is a very much awaited and much requested topic, which is GST Amnesty Scheme 2024. As we all know, the government has recently brought in amnesty scheme, which the industry was always willing and always requested to, so that at least for the initial period of GST law, which is financial year 2017-18, 18-19, and 2020, 19-20, at least these three initial periods on which if you have any demand, at least somebody can pay the demand and they get the waiver of interest and penalty. This was always the requirement from the industry side, and the GST Council in its 53rd council meeting has done this request and has brought a amnesty scheme. And in this webinar, we'll be going into this nitty-gritties and nuances of this amnesty scheme. So this slide shows you, I'll say that the major headlines of all the newspapers which you see, and they have very welcomely provided that how the government has provided a GST amnesty scheme. So I'll just read you some of the headlines of the daily newspaper. New GST amnesty scheme notified. Waiver of interest and penalty. So this is first point. This scheme provides a waiver of interest and penalty on GST tax payment for eligible taxpayer and to be effective from 1st November 2024. So just to give you a very brief one, this amnesty scheme is applicable from 1st of November 2024. And we are on 12th December 2024. So currently this GST scheme is applicable. Whosoever is eligible, whosoever is an eligible taxpayer can take the benefit of this GST amnesty scheme. And what's the benefit available here? It's a waiver of interest and penalty. So all your interest and penalty would get waived off. But when you fulfill the conditions, when you are an eligible taxpayer. What do you mean by eligible taxpayer? So we will dwell into more on this, the conditions, what are the requirements which we are required to fulfill, and then probably we'll become a eligible taxpayer to get this sweet benefit of waiver of interest and penalty. I'll just read one more headline to say that how all the newspaper have also reacted to this. New GST amnesty scheme from 1st November. Who gets interest and penalty waiver? So the newspapers are also saying that the benefit is interest and penalty. So this is a very interesting scheme, and whosoever is looking up for closure of your pending litigation can avail this benefit. But before jumping on any conclusion, we should dwell more into this. What are the conditions? So I'll take you to this amnesty scheme. So on a normal circumstances, if I take you earns by law in the service tax era, the government has came up with a specific scheme which has its own sets of sections and everything. But in the GST law, the government has taken a very different route. So came up before they came up with a new section, section 128, which has been notified in the CGST Act. So now there is no specific scheme at say. So the government has brought a specific section under section 128A. This is a new section which has been recommended by 53rd council meeting, and this has been inserted by section 146 of the Finance Act. And as I've already mentioned, this is applicable from 1st November 2024. The cherry on the cake is the waiver of interest and penalty. You get the benefit of interest and penalty. And what are the demands being covered under this amnesty scheme is what we need to understand. So just to tell you, under the scheme, the demands which have been issued under section 73 have been given the benefit under this amnesty scheme. I'll just take you a little more. In the GST law, there are two sections, section 73 and section 74. All your cases in which allegation with respect to suppression, fraud, misstatement are being allegations on which demands have been raised under section 74. And all other demands, which is a non-fraud cases, are being issued demand under section 73. So first major important condition in this scheme, all your demands with respect to section 74 are not covered very clearly, except one scenario. There is one scenario if you have a demand under section 74, still you can take a benefit under this amnesty scheme. But as a rule of thumb, majorly all your demands which are issued under section 73 are covered under this amnesty scheme. And this is the last major point. What all periods have been covered. So this amnesty scheme very clearly says your initial period of the GST law, which is financial year 17-18, financial year 18-19, and financial year 19-20. Initial 3 years of GST has been covered under this amnesty scheme. I'll take you to the next. So 53rd Council meeting, they have brought a new section, which is section 128A. But the rules have been provided by 54th Council meeting. So they have came up with a new notification number 20 by 2024, which was dated 8th October 2024. By this notification, they have brought one additional rule, which provides the forms which is to be filed under this, what is the timeline, how you can apply for this, what all scenarios have been covered. All these details with respect to the scheme has been provided. All the rules, all the forms are being provided by Rule 164, which has been inserted by notification number 20/2024. Further, on the same day, there was one more notification has been brought. Notification number 21/2024. What this notification says it provides a timeline to make the payment to avail the benefit of amnesty scheme. So in this amnesty scheme, I would say there are principally three main important dates which all the taxpayer had to be mindful of. They have to take it very seriously. These three dates. One such date is the 31st March 2025. What is this date? This date says you have to make a payment of base tax before 31st March 2025. Here I would say if you want to take a benefit under this amnesty scheme, for these initial 3 years, you have to first make the payment before 31st March 2025. Then only you will be eligible to take the benefit of this amnesty scheme. And after that, there'll be rules which are being provided by Rule 164. What is the form is required to be filed? How would if I have an appeal case, what do I do? What all cases have been covered? All these details have been covered in the subsequent slides. So this slide, which is a very important slide, section 128A. This is the main section which provides amnesty scheme. It has been divided into three clauses, majorly three scenarios on which amnesty benefit is there. But there is one more scenario which I will cover in the subsequent slide. But principally, I would say there are three scenarios which prominently covers under this amnesty scheme. First scenario, I would say, clause A. There are A, B, C clauses. So A clause says, if you have a show cause notice which has been issued by the adjudicating authority under section 73, because 74 cases are not covered under the amnesty scheme very clearly, except one case, which I'll take in the subsequent slide. So if you have a show cause notice and there was no order being passed, then you are eligible to take a benefit under this scheme for the financial year 17-18, 18-19, and 19-20. For these financial year, if you have a show cause notice, you can avail the benefit of this amnesty scheme. Second scenario, I would say, if you have an order under section 73 and you have not made a appeal, or you have made an appeal, but there is no appellate order, which is commissioner appeal order under section 107 or 108, which is a revisionary order, then still you can avail the benefit of this amnesty scheme. The third scenario, if you have an appellate order, which is an appellate order, commissioner appeal order under section 107 or 108, but still there is no tribunal, GST appellate tribunal order yet, because it's still not being formed. So their cases, that scenario is also being covered under the amnesty scheme, which is section 128A. Now, all these three scenarios have a form which a taxpayer has to file to avail this benefit. So, first form which is being provided under Rule 164 is SPL 01. If you have a show cause notice and there is no order under Section 73, you can avail the benefit of the scheme by filing SPL 01. Second, if you have an order, if you are covered under clause B or C, you have SPL 02. So I can simply say that for application, there are two forms. First is SPL 01, which is if you have a show cause notice, then you have to file SPL 01. And if you are in the clause B or C, which is order is there, either I can say adjudicating order or appellate order, then you have to file SPL 02. So this slides talk about what all scenarios have been covered under amnesty scheme. The next slide. So as my last slide says, we have section 128A. Then there was a rule 164. The government has gone ahead and issued a circular, which is circular number 238 oblique 232 oblique 20. They have issued this circular on 15th October 2024. Now, this circular provides a major clarity with respect to amnesty scheme, who all are covered. All the specific scenarios have been covered under this circular. So if you have any doubts, probably I'll cover that, or either you can go refer this circular. This is a very important circular. And this slide also same thing. If you have a notice under section 73, you are covered, or either 73.3. Then there is a SPL 01. If you have an order under section 73.9, then you can file SPL 02. And if you have an order under section 107.11 or 108.1, then also you can apply under this amnesty scheme. I'll take you, this is the most important slide, which from the starting I was saying, there is one additional scenario which has been covered with respect to section 74. So if you have a demand under section 74, which is there is an allegation with respect to your fraud, suppression, or misstatement. In that cases, you have a notice or a order, and you still wish to avail this benefit. You have to appeal against that order, and during the course of appellate proceedings, you are able to convince to the appellate authorities that this allegation which adjudicating authority has made is incorrect. What do you mean by incorrect? So suppression, misstatement, or either I can say fraud, these allegation is incorrect, and the commissioner appeal or the appellate authorities are convinced, they can pass a direction to the proper officer to say that you should consider this order under section 73 in terms of provisions of section 75(2). Then only your 74 demand would be covered under this amnesty scheme. So total we have four. First three scenarios have already been covered under the 128A clause 1, and there is an additional scenario being covered under section 128(2), which is if you have a notice under section 74 and you are able to convince to the appellate authorities that the allegation is incorrect, and they passes a direction to the proper officer to say that you should consider this demand under Section 73. Then on that basis, you can appeal or you can apply for this amnesty scheme. I am slowly taking up. So this slide, I would take first the last two pointers. First, till now we have seen, okay, what scenarios have been covered, whether it's under Section 73 or 74. Till then, till that we have already seen it. Now, this is a most important bullet. If you have a demand which pertains to your erroneous refunds, then you are not covered under this amnesty scheme. Very clearly, if you have any demands with respect to erroneous refunds, you are not eligible to claim the benefit of amnesty scheme. Last pointer, this appeal or with, so we have seen that you have three scenarios. In case of HCN, there are taxpayers who have gone against that HCN before the High Court by way of writ petition. So the government says the intention of this amnesty scheme was to reduce the litigation, and you already are before the writ petition. Then kindly withdraw that application, withdraw that appeal or writ petition, and then probably you can file an application under the amnesty scheme. Why that is so? Because the any amnesty scheme has been brought with the intention to reduce the litigation. So when you are already before a high court or a commission appeal, they will expect you to bring or withdraw that writ petition or appeal and then apply for a amnesty scheme so that it can be closed. We are not going for any merits. It's a simple closure of any litigation. So in this point very clearly says, if you are in any of the stages of your litigation, you have to first withdraw that appeal or writ petition. You have to submit a copy of the order of withdrawal if you are able to get it. And if that is not possible, you can also submit the application of withdrawal which you have filed. And basis thereto also, you can apply for this amnesty scheme. These two pointers are the most important one. I'll take in the subsequent slide. So as we have already discussed, so there are two forms, SPL01 and SPL02. There are three important timelines which all the taxpayer has to concur. First one, which we have already seen, which is the date of payment. If you want to avail the benefit under this scheme, you have to make the payment before 31st March 2025. All your payments, all your tax payment, if you want to claim the benefit of this amnesty scheme, you have to make the payment before 31st March 2025. Then you have an additional 3 months to apply under this scheme. All your forms, which is SPL01 or SPL02, you can make an application before 30th June 2025. And just to tell you, these forms are currently not available on the portal. The government or GST portal has came up with an advisory to say that all these forms would be available from 1st January only. So you have a good amount of time till 30th June. You can make the application, but your timeline for making the payment is already started from 1st November itself. So if you are willing to make use of this amnesty scheme, please make the payment before 30th March 2025. That's the second timeline. The third one, which is the most important, in case you are covered in the special scenario, which is you have a notice or order under Section 74, and the appellate authority has directed to consider this under Section 73, then in that cases, you have 6 months timeline from the date of communication of such order. So you have additional 6 months from the date of communication of such order. So currently we have three important timelines. First is the date of payment, which is 31st March 2025. Second, 3 months from that date, which is 30th June 2025. to make an application. And third one, if you are covered under the special scenario, which is notice under section 74 and has been directed to consider under section 73, you have 6 months timeline. So this is the three timelines every taxpayer who want to avail this benefit has to take care. I'll take you to the next slide, which is appeal file. So I was talking about this point. Let's say in case of HCN, you have filed a writ petition. Then if you're willing to take the benefit of this scheme, you have to enclose the order of withdrawal. That evidencing that you have indeed you have withdrawn that writ petition and you want to avail the benefit of amnesty scheme. In case you are not able to get the withdrawal order, you can also enclose the copy of application. And basis thereto only the proper officer will evaluate your application. In case you have not gone in a writ petition in HCN, but you have gone for order, then also the same things apply. If you are before commissioner appeal, same thing. So your form SPL01 or SPL02 depends upon on what stage you are at the adjudication, whether you are on the HCN stage or you are on the order adjudicating at the order stage or at the commissioner appeal order stage. So just you have to be mindful of which stage of the adjudication or appellate proceedings are you on. Basis thereto, you have to file these form SPL01 and SPL02. But still you have to withdraw that application and then only you can make. But I think most of the people who are the listener would have one doubt to say that if in case I have withdrawn my appeal, now basis this application, I was not able to convince the officer that I am indeed eligible to claim the benefit. Can I still go back to my original appeal? The answer is yes, you can go back. In case officer rejects it, still you can go back to your original appeal. This point I'll dwell more into the respective slide. The government has very categorically covered this point. So as I was talking about, there are three timelines. First, payment. Now, for availing the benefit, you have to first make the payment. Now, at the A clause, which is your scenario number 1, if you are at the show cause notice level and you want to avail this benefit, you can make the payment by DRC 03. This is the form for making the payment. But if you are at the scenario number or clause B or C, which is your order stage, whether it's adjudicating order or appellate proceeding order, then you have to make the payment by way of electronic credit ledger. I will stop for a minute. I'll give you more details. So in case of order, the GST portal maintains a new electronic liability register, which probably somebody or people have already seen it. In case you have a demand order, that order amount, the demand amount would get reflected in this. So when the officer passes an order, he'll upload on the portal and that portal captures your liability. In that cases, when you have an order, you cannot make a payment by DRC 03. You have to make the payment against this liability debit credit which has been created in liability register. And then when you make a payment, it get knocked off. So then there is a debit entry. Automatically your demand is there, and then when you make a payment, it get automatically nullified. But here the most important point, you are getting a waiver of interest and penalty. So you have to make payment only of the tax payment. That's it. Because this amnesty is brought to bring the benefit of waiver of interest and penalty. The third point, which is the most important one. So this has been brought by a circular. Here this point says, in case there are assessees who have already made the payment before the amnesty has kicked in, from 1st November, prior to 1st November itself, there are various taxpayers who have already made the tax payment and they are litigating only in respect of interest and penalty. Are they eligible to claim the benefit of this amnesty scheme? Answer is yes. And in case they have made the payment through DRC 03, they have a procedure. There is a circular specifically with circular 224 dated 11 July 2024, which says that in case you have made the payment by DRC 03 and you are at the stage of order, then probably you can file a different form, DRC 03A, which automatically make a debit entry in electronic liability register. So if you are at the order stage, then probably additional form, which is DRC 03A, you have to file that. But if you are at the HCL stage, probably DRC 03 will work out. I hope this slide is people are able to understand this slide, because this is the most important slide. Now, this is one of a new one. So just to give you a little background on this, in section 16.4, we have a timeline till 30th November. What is this 30th November timeline? If you have a ITC pertaining to, let's say, financial year 23-24. Sorry. So if you have a ITC pertaining to pertaining to financial year 23-24 till 30th November 2024, you can avail the ITC. That is a basic law under section 16.4. Now, recently government has brought in a new section, section 16.5 and section 16.6. Now, what this section is, if you have a ITC pertaining to financial year 17-18, 18-19, 19-20, 20-21, for all these 4 financial year, if you have any ITC and which you have claimed before 30th November 2021, all your ITC is correct. So they have enlarged the timeline to claim the ITC as against 16.4 timeline. Now, this is the very basic understanding of section 16.5 and 6. Now, there could be various demands which have been issued by the officers in terms of timeline of section 16.4. Now, basis section 16.5 and section 16.5 and subsection 6, all your ITC is now valid. So if you have a demand with respect to that timeline issue of section 16.4, now it is all eligible. So your tax demand would get reduced to that extent. I'll take an example here so that everybody can understand this. Let's say you have a demand of 1 lakh rupees under section 73. Now, out of 1 lakh rupees, 40,000 pertains to the demand of ITC which has been claimed after 30th November because of section 16.4. Now, because of the new section 16, 16.5 and 6 pertaining to 17, 18, 18, 19, now your ITC is valid. So your ITC demand of 40,000 would get reduced up. 60,000 would be your net demand. And basis thereto, you can claim the benefit of this scheme. I hope it's been easily understood by everybody. And if in case any questions are there, for sure we can take at the end of this webinar. So now processing of the application. Till now, we have understood what is the scenarios being covered under the amnesty scheme, which is A, B, C. And there is a special case by under which section 74. We have understood this point. Now there's a 3 timeline, which is the payment timeline, 31st March 2025. Then there is the application timeline, which is SPL 01 or 2, which is 30th June 2025. And then there is a one more timeline, which is 6 months from the date of communication in case of a special case. Till this we have understood. Now also we have understood how can you make the payment, which is DRC 03 or DRC 03A or debit entry by way of electronic liability register. Also we have understood in case you are before any appellate authority or high court by way of writ petition, you have to withdraw that application so that you can file an application under this amnesty scheme. Sorry. So I think till then, we are easy to understand this amnesty scheme. I'll take you how this processing can be done. So till then, we have understood SPL 01 and SPL 02. Sorry. So the first pointer. So a proper officer under section 73 would be a proper officer for SPL 01. Let's imagine a situation wherein you have a show cause notice and you have made an application under section 7. You have made application by way of filing SPL 01. Then the proper officer for 73 would be that proper officer. And in case you have demand order, then the proper officer under section 79 would be a proper officer to adjudicate this application also. Now, the third point. Till then, we have seen 01, 02. Now, after filing the application, any officer, the proper officer, I can say under section 73 or 79, will review your application. Sorry. And he has a timeline for 3 months. Within 3 months of the date of application by a taxpayer, he has to review that application, whether you are eligible to claim the benefit of amnesty scheme or not. In case he doesn't make any action within 3 months, there is a deemed approval and by way of issuance of SPL 05. So this amnesty scheme not only brings a timeline for taxpayer, but also for the officer that he has to action within 3 months. He cannot sit back on that application to say that I'll review myself when I wanted to. No, the amnesty scheme very clearly provides that within 3 months, you have to either accept or issue a show cause notice. In case he is not able to understand or he has some queries, so within 3 months, he has to issue a show cause notice by SPL 03. And then he will give a timeline of 1 month for a taxpayer to reply. And in case, you can also ask for a personal hearing. So after the personal hearing, he has to either, I'll take you the next slide. So after the personal hearing, he has to either accept the application by way of issuance of 05 or he has to reject that application by way of 07. So I'll recap once again. I'll say, assumingly, a person has filed an application as SPL 01. Now, from that date, there is a 3 months timeline for the officer to make either to accept that or reject that. In case he has not done any work, there is an automatic or deemed approval by way of SPL 05. And within 3 months, he has to issue a show cause notice under by way of issuance of SPL 03. And then the taxpayer has to file a reply in SPL 04. And either he can ask for an opportunity of being heard, a personal hearing. And then on that basis, the officer can issue a SPL 05, which is the acceptance of the application that now my litigation or my demand is closed. There is nothing is required to be done from here. Now this is closed. In case he rejects your application, I think most of the participant would have this question. In case he rejects your application, now he has rejected your application. Now you have two options. Either you can appeal against this application. You can appeal before Commissioner Appeal under section 107 within 3 months. And you can ask the Commissioner Appeal to look into that you are an eligible taxpayer. You are eligible to claim the benefit of this scheme. And then he can look up. I'll take this point in a next slide. So once SPL 05 is filed by way of, in case of show cause notice, there is no requirement for issuance of DRC 07. But in case you have an order stage, then because there is an electronic liability register, In the electronic liability register, officer has uploaded tax amount, interest amount, and penalty. Now you have already paid the tax. Now this liability register would be modified to the extent of tax only, because now you have got the waiver of interest and penalty already. So this would be after the acceptance of application. Now the most important, which I was talking in the previous slide, what happens when there is a rejection? So my first point says the same thing. If you have acceptance by the officer, nothing is required, you are eligible for everything, all your demands are closed. That's simple. But in case you have a rejection, you have to make a appeal under section 107. There is no requirement for pre-deposit. Why? Because you have already made the payment. You have already paid the tax amount. So there is no requirement for pre-deposit. And in the appeal stage, he will only evaluate your case with respect to whether you are eligible to claim the benefit of this amnesty scheme or not. He will not go into any merits of the case, because all your merits would be discussed in your normal appeal, not on this appeal, because this appeal is only related to your amnesty application, which you have filed and the officer has rejected. So he will only discuss about this amnesty scheme, that whether you have fulfilled all the conditions, whether you are eligible for that matter, but in case the officer has not given you the benefit, so that appeal will only be to the extent of whether you are eligible for the amnesty scheme or not. There will not be any discussion on the merits of the case. Now, if let's say you have filed an appeal within 3 months and the appellate authority agrees with your point, the appellate authority is convinced that what the proper officer under section 73 or 79 has done is incorrect, and you are indeed eligible to claim the benefit of this amnesty scheme, they will pass an order by way of SPL 06. So this is the same like SPL 05, which is the acceptance. You have closed your litigation, now it's complete. In case they reject your application, they can issue SPL 07. They reject your application, then all your original appeal will get restored automatically. So this point I'll once again explain you. Let's say you have a SPL 07, which is your rejection. You have appealed against that application within 3 months. Still, the appellate authority, which is Commissioner Appeal, felt that no, the order passed by the proper officer is correct. You are indeed not eligible to claim the benefit of this amnesty scheme. You can still go back to your original appeal and you can continue that. So this amnesty scheme doesn't holds back you, saying that okay, if you have taken the benefit of this amnesty scheme, you cannot claim any other benefit. No, you can always go back to your original appeal. So this amnesty scheme is good to that extent, at least I can say that very clearly. So they have an option of filing appeal against this rejection. Also, restoration is also possible. So this point I'll just take appeal not filed. So I have told you, against the rejection by the proper officer, you have a 3 months timeline as provided in section 107. You can either file an application before Commissioner Appeal to say that I am indeed eligible to claim the benefit of this amnesty scheme. However, the officer has not given me benefit. Kindly look into this. Probably basis there too, the Commissioner Appeal would look into this. In case you felt no, the officer was correct, I was not eligible to claim the benefit of this because of, let's say, I have not fulfilled the condition. I have not made the payment before 31st March 2025. Or either my case was 74 and there was no direction by a proper officer to consider under section 73. Or either you have not filed the application within the timeline of 30th June. Any of the condition you have not fulfilled, and the officer has indeed taken this on the charge that that the taxpayer has not fulfilled the condition. Henceforth, on the basis of it, he feel this application to be rejected. Then in that case, you can still your original appeal, which is on the basis of merit, will get restored, and you can always go back because making an appeal against that rejection would not make sense to you. So better on the basis of merits, you can go back to your original appeal and dispute that, and the commissioner appeal would hear that or writ petition, as the case may be. So this is the last slide of my webinar. This is a very simple screenshot, I can say, of all the forms which I have discussed yet. I'll SPL01, the application. If I have already said, there are three clauses and three scenarios. In that three clauses, three scenarios have been covered. First being there is a HCN. Then in that case, if you wish to avail the benefit of your amnesty scheme, you have to file SPL01. By this SPL01, you can claim the benefit of this amnesty scheme. SPL02, all your B clause and C clause. Which is your B clause, C clause? If you have an order by adjudicating authority under section 73 and you have not made an appeal against that order, or either you have a appellate authority order, commissioner appeal order under section 107, and you wish to avail the benefit of this amnesty scheme, you can make application is SPL02. Now, the third one, I have told you that after making the application, the officer has 3 month timeline. He can either reject or accept it. In case he doesn't do anything, there is an automatic acceptance, which by way will be SPL05. But if he feels that no, I would want to have some queries, he can issue a show cause notice by way of SPL03, and then within 1 month, so he'll give a 1 month timeline, and within 1 month in SPL04, you have to reply. And you can also ask a personal hearing. You can always go and meet that officer, explain your point, and basis thereto, he can either issue SPL05, which is acceptance of the application or closure of the proceedings, or SPL07, which is a rejection order by a proper officer. And then, if you feel that the rejection order made by the proper officer is incorrect, you can always claim, you can always file an application and appeal under section 107 within 3 months, and basis thereto, appellate authority will either accept or reject it. For acceptance, there is a, for appellate specifically, there is a form SPL06. And then if the appellate authority, you have not appealed against that rejection order, you can, your appeal, your original appeal would get restored. And last would be the undertaking by taxpayer that he would not file any appeal or rejection order which stores his original appeal. So you have to file an application. So these are the basic, all the forms which have been provided under section 128A, read with rule 164 and read with the circular. So this is all the forms which we have to take care. And the timelines I've already provided. There are three major timelines. First being the date of payment, which is 31st March 2025. The second being 3 months from that date, which is 30th June 2025. And then there is a special scenario, which is 6 months from the date of communication. If you have a notice or order under section 74, and still the appellate authorities have given a directions to consider that order or HCN under section 73. That would have 6 months from the date of communication. That's end from my end. Uh, Probably I can take questions if anybody has. Hello. Any questions from the audience? Sure. I have some questions. Can I get the recording? For sure, there'll be recording. Uh, the question says, should we wait for the forms to come before making a payment? So the forms would be available from 1st of January 2025. But still, I would suggest you can make the payment because that is a specific timeline, 31st March. And always you can make an application. So there is a additional time of 3 months for making an application. Will pre-deposit be paid adjusted against the final is just final liability? Yes, you can make. But whether that pre-deposit has been made by DRC 03, we need to check. And then you can check about the circular, which says if you have made any payments earlier, then probably yes, you can use that. Can an application be made before payment of tax by 31st March? That is, if an application is made on 15th and once the application accepted, no. First, you have to make a payment and then only application. So just I'll tell you, all your amnesty scheme works when you have made the payment. You have to first make the payment and then application. So that's the reason they have taken 31st March as a timeline for making the payment, and June you can make the payment in later time. Application you can make in the later time. So here it says 6 months from the date of communication, whether such 6 months starts from the appeal or so in case your appeal or your application has been rejected, all your original appeal would get restored. So it'll get restored to same officer. So there is a question which says we have a demand under section 73 and we have already made we have already made the payment by DRC 03. Can I avail the benefit of amnesty scheme? Yes, you can avail the benefit. I think this point I've already covered in my during the time of webinar itself. Can we use the credit ledger instead of cash? Yes, you can use, because all your payment has to be made by DRC 03. So you can use ITC also, not a problem. I think I have covered all the questions. Anything more? So one more query has came, demand under section 74 turned into 73 by appeal officer, correct? In case 6 months starts from the appeal order or remand order. So 6 months starts from the date of communication of the order, when it has been communicated to you, whether by way of a portal or you have received hard copy. Probably you'll have a remand order. You'll not have appeal. There'll be a same thing. There'll not be a two different order. There'll be one order which says kindly consider that demand under section 73. There'll not be two orders very clearly. There'll be one order which says kindly consider the allegation, which is suppression or your misstatement is not correct under section 75. Two, kindly consider all your demand within 73, and there'll be one order. And from that communication, whether it'll be uploaded on the portal or you receive a hard copy, as the case may be, that date would be considered. You have 6 months timeline. So if you have a partial demand is hit by limitation, then correct. I am not able to understand limitation, partial demand. So as a simple, if you have any demand which under section 74, and they have given a clear instructions, or they have communicated to consider that demand under section 73, then it will be 6 months. How a partial demand would be covered, I'm not sure, because if you have complete demand, that'll be covered. There is no pick and choose here. You have to either go full HCN or not. You cannot pick and choose. Only in respect of one, which is 16, if you have a demand under section 16(5) or 6, because of the section 16(4), then only they have given an option. Also, one more benefit they have given: in case you have a demand in respect of erroneous refunds, principally they are not eligible to claim the benefit of this scheme. But if you have a demand of that also, and other you have other demand under section 73, you can still opt for that. Proper officer will evaluate that, and then only he will accept that. So in that case, yes, payment can be made later on, because he will ascertain that. And then, but for erroneous refund, you have to make the payment of tax, interest, and penalty. All your tax had to be paid first. Then your interest and penalty for erroneous refunds would be required to be paid. But for others, you can get the benefit. Here, I will take one more question to say that in case you have a demand for 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20, and 2021, and you wish to claim the benefit of this scheme for initial 3 years, and you are ready to make the payment of 4 years, the tax payment you are ready to make, then your waiver would be only for 3 years. For the fourth year, or the period which is not covered under the amnesty scheme, you are required to make the pro rata interest and penalty payment. But the tax would be required to be paid first prior to making application of this amnesty scheme. But for the 3 years, initial 3 years, you get the benefit. This is a very important benefit, which by way of a circular, the government has clarified, which is a very important. Because in a journal scenario, the demand doesn't comes only for 3 years. It may come to 4 or 5 years. So you can get the benefit of at least 3 years. But for the period which is not covered under section 128A or amnesty scheme, I'll say you have to make the payment of interest and penalty. So recording would be available. So the question says we have to go for appeal under section 73 and tax already paid through DRC 03 for amnesty. I'm a little unclear, but what I can presume is in respect of the order has been issued under section 73, and you have already made the payment by DRC 03, and there is an appeal pending. The amnesty scheme says you have to first withdraw that application, withdraw that appeal, enclose the copy of the withdrawal or application, and then only you can make the payment. Then you can only go for the amnesty scheme. The tax which is already paid, I presume this is after order, because appeal would have been after the order. This is a normal 107 appeal. Then in that case, all your payment made by DRC 03 after the order can be made into DRC 03A. And if this payment has been made prior to order, then it automatically gel well. So it can be taken care. You can opt for amnesty scheme. But as a principle, you have to first withdraw that appeal, and then only you can opt for amnesty scheme. Because you have already made the payment, for you, only important timeline is 30th June 2025, because the tax is already paid. I believe the interest and penalty. So just to mention here, there is no refund provision for interest and penalty. In case you have already made the payment of interest and penalty, no refund can be given on this. Any amnesty scheme which government or anybody brings it, probably government, the thought process is to reduce the litigation in case, and there will not be any refund. So they are just saying, okay, we will not go into the merits of the case. We are just clearing all your litigations. So there will not be any refund. You cannot go for any appeal. Only one appeal is there in this scheme, which is you can appeal against the rejection order. That you can do that. And therein you have a 3 months timeline for sure. But because of that appeal, your original appeal still goes. No appeal done after payment through DRC, then we have to wait for 1st July. For sure, if you have already made the payment, your first timeline is already done. No appeal done after payment through DRC. I'm unable to understand, but the simple point says your application, all your SPL 01 and 2 will be available from 1st of January as the simple thing. The portal is not having still any form. So probably I'm not able to show you the forms. In case it was there, I could have shown you the forms also, so that for the ease of reference, everybody can see how the forms looks like and how to fill it. Probably we can, once the forms are available, we can have one more webinar on this. Any other questions? I hope this scheme is is an easy one. People are able to understand it. And the recordings, I think I've seen that people have asked about recordings. Recordings would be available on the Taxman portal. So you can go through. Also, the presentation is would be also available on the Taxman portal itself. So you can anytime see that. You can have the presentation also. Not to worry on that if you have joined late. I think we have covered all the questions, everything, and also we have covered the completely presentation. I can just stop that presentation